Hello, I'm Kristen Hickey. I'm going to be talking to you about my experiences, learning, future goals, and projections after the completion of the GD710 development semester. This semester, I reflected upon my own practices as a designer and as a part-time professor. This time allowed me to recognize how I currently use my skills, where they have evolved, and where I'm looking to improve. Each module was enlightening to review not only new theory and processes, but it was a time to reflect on where that evolution can happen. I went through some areas with ease, some with great impact, and defined the areas that I'd like to improve and excel in. Areas of strength for me are in time management and creativity. This comes from a mixture of years in the industry, my joy for organization, and the ease and comfort in design thinking and creative freedom. While creativity is an area of strength for me, sharing the work on forums and in presentations amongst peers stirred up feelings of self-doubt and a fear of sharing. I was reminded that Michael A. Roberto said, for a variety of reasons, we fear how others will perceive or judge us. That mindset of fear impedes our ability to be creative. This was the reminder that I need to let go of my fear so I don't limit my creative journey and allow myself to evolve. Tanya Kravinska's lecture on What is Creativity discussed the I-STEP method. While this is an area that I naturally practice in, learning about the steps in a formal way was new to me. Keeping the steps of this methodology in mind when creating was incredibly important. Learning this, I realized that the incubation period is a time that I might skim by, when in fact I feel it's a critical stage for my creative journey. Jeffrey Petty notes, the mind is like an iceberg. We are directly aware only of the part that floats above the level of consciousness. Many of us ignore the huge power of the unconscious. As a self-employed designer, the task can often seem daunting, while the desire to move projects from in progress to done is fulfilling. Utilizing the incubation period to allow my ideas to sit is valuable for them to evolve. Fostering the incubation period and week 2 challenge activity was the key to the success of this project. I went against my thoughts of moving the project to the done column and allowed my artifact to incubate. This evolved my piece and is so much more than it was just a day before. I was able to broaden the idea of the functionality into an app that I would like to visit in the future. Areas that opened my mind to a new world of knowledge, reflection, and questioning was reflective domains and research and ethics. Reflective domains was new theory to me, and it took some time to look back on my journals and cross-reference the domains. It highlighted there is a low presence in procedural and effective domains within my journal. They lacked an emotion for how the work has affected me and on weaknesses and goals. While this came as a surprise as an emotional person, it was a good reminder as to what to keep in mind when writing. As a professor, staying conscious of this is critical in my learning and my teaching. As Wu et al. Notes, effective teaching in the effective domain can help learners review their value choices, reflect on their value beliefs, revise their value systems, and then create their own approaches for innovation and creativity. This was profound information and a great reflection as a design professor to be consciously aware of. When we dove into research, I felt I was aware of some of the research tactics, but it really made me wonder, how much do I know? Diving into these areas brought up questions like, how do I create a research plan? How do I properly structure interviews, best practices for questionnaires, and how usability research and user research can differ from one another. This was an eye-opening experience as to where I want to dive deeper into my practice. As Brad Nunnally and David Farkas said, every researcher is only as good as their research plan. Gaining this knowledge can provide me with the understanding as to which qualitative and quantitative approaches will work when beginning a project. These tactics are the first steps in formulating and achieving a quality research plan. While diving into research can be exciting, we learn the ethics around the project prior to diving in is imperative. This section of the module revealed the many factors to consider when performing a research study that were unbeknown to me. Understanding that each organization has their own ethical standards and reviews, Maria Rosa wrote an article for the Nielsen Normie Group that provides a list of questions to help assess the efficacy of your organization or within your own research as a starting point. Questions within subjects such as knowledge and education, informed consent, participant welfare, recordings and photography, observers, data handling, sense of subject matter, and researcher welfare are all helpful areas to help assess your research efficacy prior to developing a research plan. When the rapid ideations were introduced, I wondered how much of a deep dive the sessions should go. Should I research? Do I need a research plan? How much should I research? Can the projects be conceptual, or should they be realistic? And the list went on. So to rein my thoughts in on this session, I decided to scale back on tasks and strictly focus on the creative ideas. I set up my task in Jira, organized everything in Notion, and began my journey. I started with a mind map that sparked a ton of ideas that I was pleased with, but second guessed each and every one of them. I stopped to reflect on why I was doing this. Was lack of experience? Was I thinking too much or not enough? Does this artifact already exist? Was I focusing too much on the final details and not enough on the process? And was I focusing on the problem versus finding the solution? As a graphic designer, visualizing the final details and the final functionality is second nature to me. Learning more about the design thinking processes, I'm reminded of what Don Norman states. We need to question the obvious to reformulate our beliefs and to redefine existing solutions, approaches, and beliefs. So just because something already existed doesn't mean it can't be reimagined into something new. So I allowed myself to move away from the fear of something that already existed and ask myself how I can reimagine a piece into something new. I stopped worrying about the final details and how it would work and moved ahead with the process of the ideation and created a written storyboard. I developed sketches, built the onboarding user flow and information architecture, and developed 17 comp frames and a fully prototyped artifact that's linked in my reflective journal. I credit this to good time management and creative freedom from working alone on this project. This resulted in an enjoyable process of developing a fun app that I would love to develop further someday. On the second rapid ideation, the theme was creativity with the caveat that it was something that I would not personally use. Feeling moderately confident after the first ideation session, I decided a small research plan would be best here. So to begin, I outlined my task in Jira and included user research for questionnaires and interviews and user testing into this session. This would ensure I utilize valuable information from my potential users. Knowing where I got caught up in the previous ideation, I tried to stay in the present moment and enjoy the process. I began with a mashup technique, but this sadly didn't turn up results that I felt were inspiring, so I quickly moved on to a brainstorm list. Beginning by itemizing creative outlets outside of my comfort zone and creative outlets for sharing and collaborating. This resulted in a list of ideas that drew me to music, challenges, sharing, and collaborating. Beginning with reviewing comparative apps, I utilized this information to formulate some research to develop a questionnaire using SurveyMonkey and interview 3 musicians to take a deeper dive into their world of creativity. The information gathered turned up results that confirmed an app of this sort would be welcome, but also provided key ideas for functionality that would be valued. I followed up with sketches and an onboarding flow and information architecture. To not make assumptions, Steve Krug notes, testing reminds you that not everyone thinks the way you do, knows what you know, and uses the web the way that you do. So usability testing was a key player in this ideation. I had my educated and experienced guesses as to how the functionality could work, but I wanted to ensure a musician could comfortably navigate through the content of the app. So to ensure the user was heard, I presented my work to one of my interviewees to gather their feedback. This resulted in some valuable edits to help the app function efficiently and eliminate unnecessary page clicks. The final app resulted in a successful prototype that is linked in my reflective journal. While the process and completion of the app was a success, drafting questions for the interviews and questionnaires brought me to wonder if and how they could have been formulated better and best practices for scouting participants. So without a doubt, my strengths in the ideation were time management and creativity. Areas to improve are to avoid getting wrapped up in the fine details, thinking too far ahead, and learning how to properly formulate questionnaires, interview questions, and confirming the right uses for user map, user journey, and information architecture. While I'm happy with the final result of the final ideation, these are certainly areas to work on. The tools, learning, and activities provided in this module brought up great insights and reflections. While journaling has never been part of my daily activities, I grew to embrace the process and enjoy the reflections and progressions. For the next module, I will improve my user research skills so that I can utilize the proper tactics for client project needs and to bring focus on user research methods to my students studying UX. I will achieve this through my master's program with Falmouth University, along with my self-directed learning by reading recommended research materials, reviewing successful research case studies, and taking online UX research, survey, and questionnaires courses offered on LinkedIn Learning. I will commit to at least 1 LinkedIn course a month and 2 to 5 hours a week on reading and research to successfully complete this goal by the end of the next module in December 2023.